Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and the new expansion for Hearthstone Rise of the Shadows is nearly upon us, so we can actually look at the cards now. So to look in the cards, you go into My Collection, and then click Crafting Mode, and then select your selector over here to the new expansion Rise of the Shadows, and then you click Include Uncraftable Cards. Last time we looked at the Priest cards, we are over the halfway point, although arguably not really, because the vast majority of the cards are going to be in the neutral cards. There'll be about 30 cards in neutral, whereas there's only 10 in the each hero class. So today we're looking at Rogue. First we have a 1-mana spell called Daring Escape. It's a common class card. Return all friendly minions to your hand. Right now I'm playing a Rogue Malygos deck. I don't know if returning all minions to your hand would help with that. I'm not really sure why you would want to do that, because there's not like a really large amount of Battlecry cards that would synergize with this. It would be Battlecry cards though that you would want this for, is to play something with a Battlecry, then bring it back to your hand and play it a second time. There seems like this is actually just a cheaper version of Vanish, which is like a 6-mana spell that returns all minions to both players' hands. And I don't know why you'd want to do that. Maybe we'll see some cards later down the road that makes sense. Rogue is about trickery, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a tricky strategy here that goes over my head. Next we have a 1-mana spell called Togwaggle Scheme. Choose a minion, shuffle 1 copy into your deck. Upgrade each turn. So if you got this, I believe, at the beginning of your turn, the beginning of your game, you would just shuffle a ton of potential copies into your deck. I assume by the 10th turn you'd be putting 10 copies of a card into your deck. What does that mean though? What does that really do? Because there's only a couple of cards that when drawn either automatically summon and have either rush or charge so that they can attack that turn, or do some kind of damage to the opponent. It's like Cursed Blood maybe, or well, not Cursed Blood, that one hurts you. The bomb, the mine, but I don't know how you could play this on the mine. Jade Idols, sure. Shuffling a bunch of Jade Idols into your hand, into your deck would make sense. Yeah, but beyond that, I don't know what strategy you would play here. I'd love to see somebody make a strategy around this, because this seems crazy, but so far I can't think of anything. Next we have a 2-mana 2-attack 3 health minion called the Underbelly Fence. I would say we're not seeing a lot of different classes of minions this expansion. There's been no new class added, which is fine, but then I feel like they should at some point add a human class and just give a lot of the human looking artwork characters that class, because that would be cool and expand the game quite a bit. A lot of the older cards could be classified as human class, and that would be cool. Maybe even expand it further, and you have a human class, and you have a witch class, and you have maybe a druid class. I don't know how far you want to get into the nitty-gritty with it. Anyways, this is a rare card. As a battle cry, if you're holding a card from another class, gain +1/+1 and rush. Rush being the key phrase, meaning it can attack a minion the turn it's summoned, but not the opponent's face. Next, we have a 3-mana 1-attack 5 health minion called Evil Miscreant. It has a combo. Combo is a key phrase that I believe only exists in the hero class of Rogue. If you play a card before this, you activate the combo effect, add 2 random lackeys to your hand. As I understand it, lackeys are 1 mana, 1 attack, 1 health minions that maybe have some random effects too, but we can't see what those lackeys look like, and there's no way to see them until we start playing the game, unless you go to Hearthstone's website, which will probably show them to you. But inside of the game, inside of the collection, there's room here where they could show potentially every single kind of lackey, or just like have a scroll bar where I can mouse wheel up and down and see all the lackeys. Does having a lackey make sense to choose a minion and shuffle a bunch of copies of that lackey into your deck? Maybe. There, I believe, is a bouncing rabbit card too. That's like a rabbit with a spring on its bottom half that gets +1 attack and +1 attack, +1 attack and +1 health every time a rabbit has been played. So if you had 10 copies of the rabbit, maybe that would work. This almost would work really cool if you could get 7 copies of something in your deck and then play another spell that says summon everything by the same name into your hand. And what we'll want to also check out is to see if Crystal Cavern, I think, is the quest card for this for the rogue, and I believe Crystal Cavern is activated when you play, I think it's 5 or 6 copies of the same card with the same name, which this would make Crystal Cavern work a lot better. When Crystal Cavern is activated, all your minions have 5 attack and 5 health. Moving on, though, we'll check that out later. We have a 4 mana, 4 attack, 3 health pirate class. Pirates, for the most part, are sticking with either being neutral or rogue class cards, and we could use a couple more pirates, as a few of them are going in the wild, but we probably don't need a ton of them. As a battle cry, discover a spell from another class. That's a very basic battle cry that I'm fairly certain I've seen as a spell or as another ability by another minion. In theory, I guess, if Hearthstone just went on forever, you would have probably a 3 mana creature that discovers a spell from another class, and then a 2 mana creature that would do that, and then 1 mana, and a 5 mana, 6 mana, 7, 8, 9, 10 mana, and you would just have a whole series of cards that just do that, and then you probably would have a 0 through 10 spell that would discover a spell from another class. But I guess you couldn't do that, because then that wouldn't make any sense. Why would you have a 0 mana spell that did the same as a 10 mana spell? But there is at least 11 opportunities to make a series of cards that do the exact same thing, and that would get very redundant and very boring very quickly. But once Activision Blizzard starts running out of ideas, we'll see more and more of that happen. And that's the same thing that almost certainly has happened with Magic the Gathering, for as old as that is, and Pokemon, collectible card game, which is basically the same company making them, so that would make sense. Next we have a 4 mana spell called Vendetta. Deal 4 damage to a minion, cost 0 if you're holding a card from another class. So this synergizes pretty well if you play... What was this? Which card was it that steals a spell from another class? So you play this on the 4th turn, and then this on the 4th turn the same way. That's a pretty good synergy. On top of that, this plus this being 0, the more 0 mana cards you get in a rogue works with a card that has a combo effect that gives that card +1 attack and +1 health. So if you could play, I think you can have 10 cards in your hand. If you can have 10 0 mana cards on your hand, play them all in a row and then play that card, you'd have a very buffed up version of that card, and we'll try and show that off later. This is the second weapon we've seen from the expansion. It's a 4 mana, 4 attack, 2 durability weapon called Waggle Pick. Has the death rattle to return a random friendly minion to your hand and make it cost 2 less. I'm still not really sure why I would want that. It's just the idea of stealing cards is this concept that they have tried to push on the rogue, but I've never really seen anybody play it successfully or even attempt to play it. It is just kind of insanity in a nutshell to say, oh yes, you're going to be able to steal your opponent's cards and use them better than your opponent could. That's silliness. Next, we have a 6 mana spell called Unidentified Contract, which is an epic rarity. And rare, common, and epic, they're all the same. It just means more arcane dust cost to enchant, to craft them or decraft them. Only when you get to the legendary classes does it change the rules on you, and you can only have 1 legendary in the deck. The spell is destroy a minion, and it gains a bonus effect in your hand. So when you draw this, you will get a randomized bonus effect. For 6 mana to destroy a minion and do something else is probably not too bad. What was the other legendary here? It was... oh, I think... did I skip over this? Yeah, I totally skipped over one. We looked at this one and then I just clicked forward. Here we go. So, we missed the 6 mana, 5 attack, 5 health legendary minion called Heist Baron Togwaggle. It has a battle cry. If you control a lackey, choose a fantastic treasure. Choose is a weird key phrase that's not a key phrase. It's not in bold. So I don't know if that means all the fantastic treasures are going to be things that are immediately summoned to your field, whether they're weapons or minions or spells, or if choose means some of them will go to your field or some of them will go to your hand, or if it means all of them will go to your hand. What this doesn't say is for every lackey you control, get a fantastic treasure. So the best way you could synergize this with the previous cards we've seen in this expansion would be to play this on the 6th turn. Play something that would let it either shuffle more copies into your deck or return all friendly minions to your hand and play it a 2nd time. And then you'd also have to play some lackeys before you could play it a 2nd time. So depending on what the fantastic treasures are, which again doesn't show you what those fantastic treasures are as far as options, is going to drastically affect how good this card is. It's probably not that great at 5 attack and 5 health for 6 mana, but depending on what the treasures are, it's probably fine. And then finally we have a 7 mana, 6 attack, 6 health legendary called Talk Noswhisker. Whenever you shuffle a card into your deck, add a copy to your hand. So this certainly would synergize quite a bit with this. So you play this on the 7th turn, and you play this on the 8th turn to maybe put 9 copies of something in your hand. But what is that something is the real question. Because that's the part that doesn't really make full sense. What is the one minion you would just want so many copies of? Is it a specific minion, or is it just a generic minion? Like, having a bunch of copies of this card is fine. Like, that helps. Sure. Here's the legendary card for 3 mana, gains +2/+2 for each card you've played this turn. So in theory, if you had a 0 mana minion on the field, you put 8 copies into your deck for 0 mana, and you have that legendary that also puts 8 copies into your hand. Let's just assume that that would all work. that your hand is completely empty before that, except for having this card. Then you played 6. Actually, you'd only be able to play 6 on the field, because it would have and this would be Whisk, basically. That would be the only 0 mana minion to really consider is the Whisk. So you put 6 Whisks on the field for 0 mana. That plays 6 cards. Probably, actually, you'd only put 5 on the field because you'd have another minion on the field. So you play 5 cards, play a 6th card to get all the copies. So you're at best then getting plus 12 to this for 3 mana. So that's a 14/14. That's hardly a 1-turn kill for what would be probably an 8-card combination, really. It's not as good as it sounds, and it seems unlikely that you could play for that for 1-turn kill a lot of times. You could potentially summon a 1/1 copy of Malygos and then put a bunch of copies of the 1/1 copy of the Malygos in your hand, and I guess that's what you're trying to do, is that it would work with the Malygos, which is spell damage plus 5. So yeah, that would make sense. Is there anything else that makes sense though? No, not really. Just combo cards in general, and maybe stealing cards if you have nothing better you can do with a rogue. It really is Malygos still. So the Malygos strategy is a really hard strategy to play. As one who is playing it, and let's just show it off. Custom rogue here. So it's all about playing this legendary 9 mana 4 attack 12 health dragon that gives you spell damage plus 5. You want to get 1/1 copies of that on the field, and when you can get that on the field by triggering the death rattle of Kobold Illusionist, which would summon a 1/1 copy of a minion from your hand, you try to trigger this death rattle as many times as possible to get spell damage. And then you also have to have something like this in your hand from very early in the game. You have to just sit on these cards for a very long time and get spell damage plus 5 or plus 10 or plus 15. So this is doing half of the 30 health, while you play something like this that gives you 2 cards that deal 1 damage. So I'm seeing how with the new expansion this will change. Like this with spell damage plus 10 would do 13 damage. So playing 2 of those almost does 30. This weapon triggers the death rattle of a friendly minion when the weapon is used up. It has a death rattle to trigger other death rattles. So I imagine Malygos will change quite a bit. And even something like this might work in some of the existing decks. Wow, this card might actually be very good, or might not be very good at all. Alright, well, that's as far as I think I can go with Rogue. Still kind of feels like it's not changing much. If anything, it's making Rogue more powerful, which is fine in this case in my mind, because playing that Malygos deck requires you to have Malygos. It requires you to to do a lot of work, a lot of preparation, be very careful about how you play, and in general, if it takes that much skill and that much effort and that much focus to win, you probably should win. So it doesn't feel like it's a cheap win if somebody beats me with Malagos. They knew what they were doing and they did it right. That's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.